They met in the way that matters most by accident, and at exactly the wrong time. Marcus was 17, bleeding from a cut above his eyebrow, sitting on the curb outside a convenience store at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. He wasn't crying. He wanted to make that clear to himself. He was simply sitting very still, waiting for something. He didn't know what to happen next. Joel came out of the store with a bag of chips and a bottle of water, and stopped when he saw him. "You need that looked at," Joel said, pointing at the cut. "I'm fine," Marcus said. "You're really not." Joel sat down on the curb beside him. He opened the bag of chips and held it out. Marcus stared at it for a moment, then took one. They sat there for 40 minutes. Joel didn't ask what happened. Marcus didn't explain. By the time Marcus stood up and said he had to go, something had already been decided between them, wordlessly, the way important things often are. They were inseparable after that. It is difficult to explain, to someone who hasn't experienced it, what it means to have a friend like that, not a best friend in the childhood sense of sleepovers and shared lunches, but something older and more serious. A person who becomes, without either of you planning it, the fixed point you navigate by. Marcus was the quiet one. He thought in long, slow circles, turning problems over and over before speaking. He wanted to be an architect. He drew buildings in the margins of his notebooks, impossible structures, towers that leaned into wind, bridges that seemed to float. Joel was the opposite. Quick, loud, magnetic. He walked into rooms and changed their temperature. He wanted to be, well, he changed his mind constantly. Actor, chef. Marine biologist. Journalist. The specifics didn't matter. What mattered was the wanting, which in Joel was a kind of energy, a permanent forward motion. They balanced each other without trying. Marcus slowed Joel down when Joel needed slowing. Joel pulled Marcus forward when Marcus got stuck in his own head, which was often. Years passed. They went to different universities, but visited constantly. They were in each other's cities every few months, sleeping on floors, staying up too late, arguing about films and politics, and whether it was acceptable to put pineapple on pizza. Joel said yes. Marcus said no. This debate ran for 6 years without resolution. They were 23 when everything began to change. It started with money. It always starts with something small. Joel had an idea for a company. A tech startup, an app that connected freelance designers with small businesses. He had a business plan, a pitch deck, the beginnings of a website. What he needed was a co-founder. Someone he trusted completely. He asked Marcus. Marcus said yes without thinking. Which, he would later understand, was the problem. Not the yes, the without thinking. He should have thought about it. He should have asked questions. How much time? What are the financial projections? What happens if this fails to the money and to us? But it was Joel. And so Marcus said yes. The first year was exhilarating. They worked from Joel's kitchen, 16-hour days, terrible coffee, takeaway containers stacked by the door. They argued constantly and productively. They built something real. By the end of the year, they had 40 clients and a small office and a third employee named Priya who told them both they were impossible to work with, then stayed anyway. The second year was harder. Growth created pressure, and pressure revealed things. Joel made decisions quickly, too quickly, Marcus felt. He signed contracts without consulting Marcus. He hired people without discussing it. He had a vision for the company, and he moved toward it the way he moved toward everything, fast, certain, not always looking at what he knocked over on the way. Marcus raised it. Once carefully. Joel listened, nodded, agreed, and then continued exactly as before. Marcus raised it again. This time Joel didn't nod. "You're slowing us down," Joel said. "Every decision takes 3 meetings with you. We need to move faster." "We need to move correctly," Marcus said. The silence after that was different from all the silences before it. Those had been comfortable. This one had edges. The breaking point came in the third year. A larger company wanted to acquire them. The offer was significant, enough to change both their lives. Joel wanted to take it. Marcus didn't. He believed in what they'd built. He wanted to keep building it. They argued for 3 weeks. In the office, in restaurants, over the phone at midnight. Joel said Marcus was being sentimental. Marcus said Joel was being reckless. They said things that were true and things that were unfair, and several things that were both simultaneously. In the end, Joel had the controlling stake. He made the decision. They sold. Marcus received his share of the money and cleared his desk on a Thursday afternoon, and drove home and sat in his apartment for a long time without turning on any lights. He wasn't devastated about the company. Not entirely. He was devastated about something harder to name, the discovery that friendship, however real, does not make two people the same. That you can love someone and still be fundamentally different in the ways that, under pressure, turn out to matter most. He didn't call Joel. Joel didn't call Marcus. 3 months passed. It was Priya who broke it. She texted them both separately, "I'm not getting involved. But you're both being idiots. That's all." Then she texted them both together, "Dinner Friday. I've already booked the table. Don't make me come to your apartments." They went. It was deeply uncomfortable for the first 20 minutes. They talked to Priya instead of to each other. They ordered food carefully, looking at menus longer than necessary. Then Joel said, "The pineapple on this pizza is actually good." It was a terrible pizza place. The pineapple was not good. Marcus looked at him. "It's not. It objectively is. You've been wrong about this for 8 years. And yet I remain consistent." Something loosened. Not everything, not the hard parts, not the questions about trust and control, and what had been said in those 3 weeks of arguing. But something. They talked that night more honestly than they had in years. Not about the company, about themselves. About what the company had meant to each of them, and why. Joel admitted he had made decisions without Marcus because he was afraid that if he slowed down, he'd lose confidence. Marcus admitted he had held on so tightly because the company was the first thing he'd built, and letting go felt like losing a version of himself. These were not comfortable admissions, but they were true ones. Friendship, Marcus thought on the drive home that night, is not the absence of conflict. He had believed that, without knowing he believed it. He had thought that real friendship meant agreement, or at least the ability to reach agreement. He had thought that love between friends was a kind of immunity against the worst of each other. It wasn't. Real friendship was something harder and more durable than that. It was knowing the worst of someone, their fear, their selfishness, their blind spots, and deciding that the sum of them was still someone you wanted in your life. It was Priya booking a table and refusing to accept that two people who mattered to each other would simply stop mattering. It was sitting in a bad pizza place arguing about pineapple when the real argument was over, and finding, in that ridiculous familiar debate, the thread that led back to everything that had been good. 5 years later, Marcus designed a building. Not a large one, a community library in a small town, his first real commission. He spent 18 months on it. It was, by any measure, the most important thing he had ever made. Joel flew in for the opening. He arrived late because he always arrived late, and he was wearing a jacket that was slightly wrong for the weather, and he walked in and looked up at the ceiling. Marcus had done something extraordinary with the light. The whole room seemed to breathe, and he didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "Marcus." "I know," Marcus said. I know." Joel put his hand briefly on Marcus's shoulder. "That was all. That was enough." They went to the worst restaurant they could find afterward and ordered the pizza with pineapple on it. And they argued about it for 2 hours, and neither of them won, and both of them did. There is no clean ending to a story about friendship, because friendship doesn't end, it changes, shifts, survives things you didn't think it could survive. and comes out the other side shaped differently but still, somehow, itself. Marcus and Joel were not the same people who had sat on that curb at 17. They had hurt each other. They had been selfish and afraid and occasionally unkind. They had tested the thing between them and found, to their own surprise, that it held. Not because it was perfect, because they had chosen over and over in pizza restaurants at dinner tables, in buildings full of light, to keep choosing it. That is what friendship is in the end. Not the accident of meeting, not the ease of the early years, but the choice, made again and again, in full knowledge of who the other person is. Made anyway,